But let me go across to Rick Mehta. He's with the Republicans. Mr. Mehta, thanks very much for being with us. If you see some of the election rhetoric of Donald Trump in the last 24, 48 hours, it's been as aggressive as usual. Kamala Harris has been muted in contrast. Do you believe that this aggressive approach right in the end of this election campaign will work in Trump's favor?
You know, it's going to work to fire up his base. I think his base is looking for that authentic Trump that we know and that we're used to, the ones that you see at his rallies consistently. And because right now the Trump campaign, they know that they have the upper hand when it comes to low probability of when voters that don't normally participate in elections, low propensity voters, they're going to be turning out big time. That's what they're counting on. And so they think that the polls are probably wrong. They don't think that the race is currently tied. They think that once you have low propensity voters, that those that don't normally participate in elections, they're the ones that are getting fired up and kind of glued to this election, watching with close eyes, and the ones that they're going to drive out to the polls. Remember, Republicans turn out on the day of the elections, whereas Democrats generally participate in greater numbers through mail-in voting and early voting. And so today is the day for Republicans to show up.
I mean, that's what the Republicans would definitely want. But Ipsos in their latest poll seem to suggest that Kamala Harris about 2% ahead. Do you believe, I mean, it is obviously within the margin of error, but just in terms of late momentum, some would suggest that it's with Kamala Harris. How would you respond?
Yeah, the polls are only as good as the data that comes in and the data that goes out. And we know that that data is not good data. We saw it in 2016. We saw it in 2020. In 2016, remember, President Trump was down by more than 10 points of Hillary Clinton, and we all know how that turned out. So again, it's going to come down to low propensity voters, those that don't participate in these polls and these surveys, the ones that turn up to vote on the day of. We saw historical turnout in my home state of New Jersey in 2020. When I ran for U.S. Senate, we broke records of the number of people that participated in voting. And so we know that more and more people are going to turn out today. So it's going to be very hard. It's about as predictable as the weather today. And if there's going to be a large turnout of voters that you don't normally see, then those polls are going to be very wrong.
Sanjeev Joshipura, Global Executive Director at Indiaspora, joins us at the stage. Thanks very much for being with us. You know, as we wrap up the election campaign in the United States, is it your sense that the economy is going to be perhaps the dominant theme? Or do you believe that some of the other issues, for example, the battle for democracy itself, something which Kamala Harris has spoken about, will be one of the key issues?
Thank you, Vishnu. You know, if you look at the surveys that have been done of the Indian American voter in the United States, we typically find that inflation is the top pocketbook issue that really animates people. And it's followed by things like economy overall generally and abortion rights, reproductive rights. There are other issues that rank below that, such as immigration and healthcare and crime and so on and so forth. But typically, one finds that really the election is going to be more and more decided, even among the Indian community, by pocketbook issues.
Okay. Mr. Mehta, you know, how would you respond to those who say that at the end of the day, the campaign which Trump ran has been a negative campaign, and in terms of what America needs, it isn't something that comes from a negative campaign? For example, personal attacks, fear-mongering, revisiting past controversies, polarization, the use of misinformation. I could go on. I mean, these are allegations you've heard about many times before. How would you respond to those who say that Trump's campaign has been characterized as being negative? Can he win an election on the back of that?
Yeah. So I don't need to characterize that. I think what we need to focus on is the things that are affecting the everyday Americans. If they are unable to afford the cost of goods, kitchen table issues, if they're concerned about what's happening to their children in the schools, if they can't afford gas and and labor costs are going high, inflation rates are skyrocketing, and the Inflation Reduction Act that the Biden-Harris administration has touted as a success has actually increased inflation, has chilled innovation, and many of our industries and sectors continue to be affected, which are affecting hardworking Americans every single day, where you see layoffs across the board and high unemployment rates, especially among the minority blocs. I don't need to say anything. The country is in a negative downward spiral, and we want someone that can lift us up. Now, President Trump has a track record. He did it He kept interest rates low. He kept inflation low. And look what happened under the Biden-Harris administration. Vice President Harris also has a track record, and she has driven the economy into the negative state that it is. And so in terms of whether or not he's going to win on rhetoric, sure, every campaign has extremist talking points as we go down. Vice President Harris is accused of the same thing as President Trump is. But the bottom line is those that are coming today to vote care about the economy, and they care about putting food on the table and being able to afford things, because Christmas is coming up and people care about what's going to happen to their families. And that is where Trump has the upper hand than Vice President Harris.